Hello and welcome to today's webinar on ESTCP funding opportunities. My name is Laura Mack and I will be moderating today's session. We will get started in a few moments. While we wait for others to join, I would like to cover a few logistical items. Today's broadcast will be listen only. We will have a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. You may submit questions by using the Q&A box on the black control panel on your screen. You do not need to wait until the Q&A period to submit your questions. In fact, we encourage you to submit them in advance of that session. The phone lines will remain listen only throughout the presentation, so we will not be taking any questions verbally. We will not be able to answer questions about specific proposal ideas or technologies during this webinar. If you run into any technical problems, please send your issues through the chat box, also on your panel control. Please note that both the audio and the presentation of today's sessions will be archived on our solicitation webpage in case you would like to refer to them in the future. Today's speaker is Dr. Herb Nelson, the Director of ESTCP. Before I turn it over to Herb, I remind phone participants this is a listen-only session, and to submit questions, please use the Q&A box on the bottom of your screen. Herb?
Thank you very much, Laura. Appreciate it. Let's go to the next slide, please. So Andrea Leeson was called away at the last minute. She won't be able to join us for the first half of this presentation, but she'll be around later in the question and answer period to answer questions specific to environmental restoration. So on we go to the next slide, please. So this, of course, presentation discusses how to do business with ESTCP for the recent call, but as we always talk about, we have two really companion programs. On the left-hand side is the Strategic Environmental Research and Development Program, which is a science and technology research and development program. The call for those proposals went out in October, and we've already passed the deadline for pre-proposals. We're talking today about the Environmental Security Technology Certification Program, which in DoD words is a demonstration validation program. And so the rest of this talk will be about ESTCP. So this shows the standard Department of Defense technology development line. The people that started certifying ESTCP intentionally followed this pattern so that it would be, the technology we developed would fit right into the DoD use. After we get some requirements from the services, the DoD goes through both basic and applied research. Some of you will know that as budget category 6.1 or BA1, through advanced development. And that's all the function of CERTA. And then when we move to ESTCP, it's so-called 6.4 demonstrations, or BA4, and those are demonstration validations. This is where we take the technologies out to an actual defense site, and we collect data on whether they are better or worse than the existing processes, and whether they cost more or less than the existing processes. So we divide ourselves sort of administratively and for project evaluation purposes into these 5 program areas. On the top left is weapon systems and platforms. That really has to do with the defense industrial base, maintenance depots, compounds, chemicals. In the top middle is installation, energy, and water, which ought to be pretty straightforward. Focuses mostly on energy, but there's a water topic also this year. On the top right is environmental restoration, which is really traditional chemical cleanup. Sort of the roots of CERTA are in this program area. The bottom right is munitions response, which is the picture shows is really focused on unexploded ordnance in the underwater environment. We've really moved past the land stuff and are focusing on the water now. And then finally on the bottom left is resource conservation and resiliency, which really deals with all both built and natural infrastructure of the Department of Defense and how we can increase its resiliency and availability for training land. So really, we have 2 sets of drivers that motivate our work, and when we get later on in the presentation, we get to the topics, you'll see that these topics flow exactly out of this. The first set, and I made a mention of it a minute ago in the resource conservation top program areas, the sustainability of ranges, the facilities of the DoD, and operations, and that ranges from threatened and endangered species management responsibilities, noise from DoD operations, toxic air emissions and dust. A lot of our bases and installations in the Southwest are regulated at dust emissions, through the impact of changing environment and how we can adapt to that. The second set of things are on the next slide, and that's really both ends of hazardous chemicals and materials that we've put in the environment. Contamination from past practices, we develop ways to remediate these both more quickly and more efficiently for less money. I guess all that together makes more efficiently. And at the same time, we're looking to prevent these kinds of contaminations in the future or in the present. So we're really working on developing new procedures in the defense industrial base that don't involve these hazardous pollutants. So you'll see in a minute, all of the topics will flow from these two things. So here's what we really do in ESTCP, and this is a little duplicative of what I said on the slide when I talked about the technology development line, but let's hit it one more time because it's important. So the technologies we seek to demonstrate, of course, have to be innovative. We clearly want them to be cost effective, and that means either better performing or lower cost. And obviously, we focus in ESTCP on environmental energy technology, installation energy, technologies. So lots of times these have been developed in the R&D programs of the Department of Defense, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they've been developed through other sources in the research and development phase and are now ready for demonstration. So there's no bias for one or the other in this program. But we're always looking toward implementation. This is the first step toward getting these technologies used in the Department of Defense. So we want, the first sub-bullet under that is direct technology insertion, meaning we want to do these demonstrations at a DoD installation. And where appropriate, we want to interact with regulators early in the process so that when we're ready to implement these things, we've already got regulator buy-in. So of course, we focus on the needs of the DoD user community. Okay, go ahead. Little slide problem there. Okay, so this also is a little duplicative of the last slide, but we're going to hit all these things because we really want to make sure everybody on the call understands what we're looking for in ESTCP. We don't want you doing work on a proposal that's the wrong level of maturity and spending time that you don't really need to spend. So we want technologies that are ready for a large-scale demonstration and can themselves benefit from a demonstration on a DoD installation because they can get real input streams or real conditions. We'll need that demonstration so that you can get good cost and performance data. The output of these ESTCP projects is really focused on cost and performance data. And then we want to use those results of those demonstrations to help toward commercialization, if appropriate, or broader adoption in the Department of Defense. So the second bullet is also important though. If the commercial technology is already in use, we would say, let's just buy it. We don't need to demonstrate it. We know how it works. Let's just go outside and buy it. And then that's something that's not an ESTCP appropriate. That's an acquisition project. So here's how we do our projects or execute our demonstrations. We clearly want to partner with stakeholders. That's how we get involvement, and that's how we facilitate adoption of these technologies afterwards. So that means we do the demonstrations at DoD facilities. We want the developer of the technologies, the executor, to interact with regulators and the end users so that everybody sees what's going on and everybody buys off early on. Obviously, I've said several times, we want to do this under real operational conditions so that the cost and performance data that we gather are meaningful. And then, of course, we're always looking to identify DoD market opportunities. And then for some of our technologies, we're looking to identify even broader technology transfer opportunities. It's certainly good for us if the DoD gets something out of these technologies and the country as a whole gets something else out of it, gets something also. So we have a number of project requirements, and when people are developing proposals, we always want them to be aware of this because none of these things come free. You clearly need to write in there enough resources to support this. Before a project does its demonstration, we ask for a formal demonstration plan. We want to see in advance what the performance objectives are. We want to see how you're going to make a decision whether or not you meet those performance objectives. And these things are sent out for independent review. So we want to settle on what's going to be measured and how we're going to decide before there's ever a spade in the ground or a beginning of a data collection or the beginning of a something setting up in the field. Then, of course, we go out and execute the technology demonstration. We collect the data that we've agreed to in the demonstration plan that we're going to detect. And then, of course, the output, I've been saying this several times on these slides, the output is a written final report that talks about both the technical performance, which of course we hope is positive, and the cost, which we hope is negative. And then at the end, we will be seeking from the demonstrator support for the transition. So we may be involved with interacting with the regulators, as I've said several times. We may need to follow up with some guidance and training opportunities, whatever is appropriate for the technology that you're looking to demonstrate. So here is how the process goes. You see at the top, there are 3 actual calls. This is really for contracting and federal acquisition regulation purposes. Private sector people, universities respond to the broad agency announcement. Department of Defense scientists respond to the Department of Defense call, and other federal organizations respond to the 3rd. All of those will funnel to the same pipe after that. The first step is a short pre-proposal, 5 pages of technical. All the details are on the website. We then screen the pre-proposals mostly for applicability and the correct maturity level. We certainly don't want you going any further if we're not in agreement that this is appropriate for ESTCP. Then we invite full proposals from those pre-proposals that are judged to be competitive and in the right level. And part of the full proposal process is both a written full proposal and an in-person briefing to the ESTCP technical committees, who then are in charge of doing the selections. So all this plays out over you'll see a schedule in a while, all this plays out over the rest of the fiscal year. So here is that schedule that I said you'd find. Maybe it's a little shorter than a while. So obviously the solicitation was released January the 7th. You probably know that if you're listening to this webinar. I hope you know that pre-proposals are due on March the 5th, 2 p.m. Eastern time. We really are almost rarely able to accept anything past that. It's going to take the internet going down in your part of the country to make us waive that deadline. So please pay attention to that deadline. We try to get full proposals requests out by early June of 2020. Then full proposals will be due in 6-8 weeks after the full proposal requests go out, giving you time to do a good job of turning your pre-proposal into full proposal. Obviously, more costing data and more certainty is going to have to be applied by the time you get the full proposal. We schedule the briefings before the technical committees in September. A few of them may be in the last week in August, but mostly September. And then we're aiming to select these projects in the first of the fiscal year so that when we receive our funding, we can get the project contracting started if it's a private sector organization, or we can start transferring the money to a federal organization. So we really want you out in the field, out doing something in spring of 2021. So as I said, there's 3 different calls. You can see the details of the DoD call. This is going to look really the same when we flip through these slides. The DoD call is slightly broader than the topics in the BAA call. You'll see that as we get to the individual topics. The next slide shows the broad agency announcement, and you see, of course, it's the same, except for that first bullet. For the broad agency announcement, we have specific topic areas that we're looking for. And I'm going to say this now, and I'll say it 3 or 4 more times. Please make sure that you are responsive to that topic area. If you really have to find yourself stretching to make your technology fit under the topic area, that's probably not a very wise use of your time. So look at the topic area and make sure you fit before you send in a pre-proposal. Okay, so here are the selection criteria, and I've already given the first 2 of these away in an earlier slide, but I'll say them one more time. Step number 1, the pass-fail gate is clearly, is this relevant to the call? So that's, do you match the technology you're proposing, match what we're looking for? The second one is an appropriate level of technological maturity. So if there's still research and development questions to be answered, if you're still trying to understand mechanisms, that's really not an ESTCP project, that's the applied end of CERTA. If it's all, on the other hand, if it's already commercializable technology and you just like to use it one more time in the Defense Department, that's also not appropriate for demonstration validation. That becomes an acquisition system. So the 2 pass-fail gates at the top, and then after that, pre-proposals and proposals that pass those gates then are evaluated on technical merit, cost benefit, of course, to the Department of Defense, ability for this technology to transition, mostly to Department of Defense uses, but as I said, dual use is perfectly good for us, and then finally cost. So lots of times people ask what makes a competitive proposal, and I think it ought to be obvious, but here are many of the things. And so this is about the 4th time now I've said this top bullet. You clearly must address a topic area. Many times people spend a lot of effort And, you know, it's sad, but they waste a lot of time because they don't address the topic area. Clearly, also for us, we want well-defined demonstration questions. The best way not to be accepted is to say, we're going to collect a whole bunch of data with these 27 sensors, and we're going to figure it out when we get it. That's not going to be a successful proposal. So we want to understand the questions you're going to ask. We want to understand what data you are going to gather to answer those questions. And then we want you to convince us that, of course, that this will be a significant benefit to the Department of Defense. And I've said several times, reduce costs, improve performance, that's the best of all worlds, or one or the other of those. And then, of course, we're not really in the habit of buying divining rods. We want a technically sound proposal that's based on real science. Okay, so now this is the place where we would normally switch to Andrea, so you get a change of voice and we would talk about the topics. So that ain't happening today. So we're going to just talk about the topics in the same voice. So these are the broad agency announcement topics. We'll get to the input for the Department of Defense people in just a minute. So this is a topic that is across all of the program areas. We've invested in this now for 4 or 5 years in a row. Everybody tries to pick 1 or 2 projects that fall into this topic in each program area each year. We don't always make it. But we're really looking for things that have been successfully demonstrated in ESTCP that need some sort of a kickstart to get out and be used. It may be training, it may be guidance documents, it may be a web portal or something. This is really to drag across the last couple of finish lines and get things out in the field. So we certainly invite present proposals based on this. Okay, so now let's move to the program areas. The first of these is the Environmental Restoration Program area. And we've had this topic in the past, and it's relatively broad. We're looking for methods and technologies to manage contaminated groundwater. So you can read in the first bullet, tools, methodologies, that's very broad, technologies. The DoD manages a lot of sites with contaminated groundwater, and you can see there's many emerging chemicals in the list in the first sub-bullet, but also some old hardies like chlorinated solvents, energetic compounds, et cetera. So this is still a big problem for DoD. You see under the areas of interest several things that they're looking for. In this case, it's in good shape because there are 3 recent workshop reports that Environmental Restoration has had that are on our website. So I think if you're thinking about this topic area, it would be well worth your while to take a look at the appropriate workshop report, see what we've been supporting, see what the outcome of the workshop was. Often these things have lay out a 5-year and a 10-year research plan, see how you fit into that. So take a look at those before you submit here. The other project, the other topic area in environmental restoration concerns contaminated sediments. So these now, this is maybe a Navy issue a little bit more than a DoD-wide issue, but the Corps of Engineers also has some of these, where we're managing sediments that are the result of digging or construction or something. And we've got a real problem with all the compounds, you see them above, leaching out of these things, getting back to recontaminate marine and other waters. So take note of the last bullet on this. We're not really looking for contaminated radionuclides, contamination with radionuclides. Again, there was a recent workshop report listed on the bottom of this. Unfortunately, all our URLs are quite long. I apologize for that, but you can probably cut and paste it in there. So, okay, move on to the next, please. So now we're going to let Dave Bradley, who is the program manager for munitions response, give you a quick little overview of the munitions response BAA topic.
Hello, everyone. Voice change. The movement to the marine environment has raised the level of complexity that we have to deal with. So there's a very high interest in technologies that do the things you see listed there: detect, classify, remediate, also localize, which should be in there as well. In addition, because of the size of many of the locations that we are going to be forced to remediate, we're interested in wide area detailed survey techniques. so that we're not spending years trying to identify the locations and the details of them. And finally, because of the complexity of the various systems that are under development, we are in the process of developing standardized demonstration sites where they're documented, where we can actually do competitive tests with various kinds of sensing systems. And I'll stop at that point and pass it back to her.
Okay, now we'll talk about the BAA topics that are in the Resource Conservation and Resiliency Program area. And this group is trying again with a brown tree snake control topic. So focusing on biosecurity and the limitations, particularly obviously in the Pacific, on strategic mobility imposed by the problem with brown tree snakes and islands in the Guam in particular. So we're looking, as you can see, for devices to help control brown tree snakes, systems that remove tree snakes, and any methods in the bottom the third and fourth bullet. I couldn't get that out of my mouth. Notice though that we are not looking for modifications to the current dead-based system. We're looking for innovative technologies that are different than just an evolutionary update to what we have. Okay, and then the second one is a model comparison. This is for coastal total water level models. There are many empirical, analytical, and numerical models that are being used. It's very difficult for installation personnel to understand which one they should be using, what group they should be using to help them understand what's going on in their installation. So we're really looking, and as it is laid out in the second bullet, we want expert analysis. So we need people that know what's going on in this thing, helping put together decision support aid so that installations can make wise choices of the models they're going to use. And then now we'll move on. There are no BAA topics in the weapon systems and platform area. So now we will move to installation, energy, and water. And for that, we have Tim Tatro, who is the program manager for that area.
Hello, everybody. For installation, energy, and water, we have 4 topics we're issuing this year on BAA, 2 of which are related to energy resilience, 1 related to water resilience, and the fourth related to energy efficiency technologies. So the first energy resilience topic is more focused, and we're looking at building level energy storage solutions for purposes of improving energy resilience and reducing utility costs. We expect that these solutions are likely to be implemented through energy financing mechanisms like utility energy services contracts or energy savings performance contracts. So we're kind of encouraging teams to coordinate with or partner with utilities or ESCOs to perform the demonstration. It's not a requirement, we're just encouraging that. And also the projects will be implemented in 2 phases. First will be kind of development of a design and performing a technical economic analysis showing the approach for calculating guaranteeing savings, which is part of a requirement for these financing projects. And then the phase 2 will be to actually deploy the system in a field test. So in developing your pre-proposals, kind of keep that in mind as you think through how it would be conducted. The next topic is more broadly looking at installation energy resilience. So we're looking, like I said, just for a wider array of solutions to improve energy resilience at our military installations. We have here a list of sub-list of bulleted ideas or areas of some interest. It's not, we're not limited to those, but that just gives an idea of some of the areas that we've had input from and are currently interested in. Of note too is that for proposals that include a solution that is to be integrated with an asset that is owned or operated by non-DoD entities, we ask that you make an effort to coordinate with those asset owners either to have them participate in the project or at least get some letter of support that they would be willing to allow for integration with those systems. The next topic is one that we've issued a few times in the past. It's integrating energy efficiency technology demonstrations with utility energy services contracts. Here we're really working on or focused on accelerating the deployment of newly commercialized technologies that have not yet really been deployed in DoD installations. Again, knowing that technologies are often implemented through these financing mechanisms like USCs and ESPCs, we want to get these demonstrations done and performed and conducted with the entities that are implementing projects like this. So in this case, we are asking that projects be either led by or co-led with utilities or their ESCO partners, and that the projects seek to integrate with a planned utility energy services contract on a military installation. Then the last topic is, again, broadly looking at enhancing installation water resilience on our military installations. Again, here's a bulleted list of particular issues that we are interested in. It's not limited to those, but this just gives you a good idea of some of the areas that are of particular interest. Again, with this, we ask that if your proposal intends to integrate with some existing assets that are owned by non-DoD entities, that you make an effort to coordinate with those asset owners or get some letter indicating that they would be willing to allow you to integrate with those systems.
Okay, so now we will talk about the Department of Defense call. As I said earlier, these are a little bit broader in most cases. The first program area we're going to talk about is environmental restoration. You can see there's an enormous number, a very big number of topics that are of interest here, from monitoring chemical contamination through wastewater treatment, stormwater treatment, risk assessment, and then of course all of these DoD projects implicitly have the innovative technology transfer approaches. So any DoD investigator that's interested in responding with the technology transfer approach should just do it as it is described in the BAA topic area. And as before with environmental restoration, there are a number of relevant workshop reports. They're all listed out at the bottom of the slide here, where you can see what we've supported in the past and what our plan is for the next few years. Moving on to munitions response, you will find that the DoD call is almost word for word the same as the BAA call. So Dave didn't get to read it again, so I'll just tell you, if you paid attention to the BAA call for munitions, you paid attention to this one. Resource conservation and resiliency has a significantly broader call. Almost all of the topics that fall under the resource conservation and resiliency program area are covered by this DoD call. They have some special interest topics, of course, which mirror the BAA, but they're interested more broadly in proposals that address natural resources, emissions, and remember I talked about that way longer on about the third slide, and we're always interested in resilient infrastructure. Tim talks specifically about the energy side of that, but RC supports a lot of things on the both natural and built infrastructure. And then weapon systems and platforms has a call on the DoD side of the house, and you can see this also is pretty broad and it covers almost all of the topics under weapon systems and platforms. Manufacturing and maintenance, of course, that's back to our original drivers. Can we find alternative materials and processes that help us avoid the use of toxic materials? They're also looking for green energetics, how to make them, how to demill them, demilitarize them at the end of their lives, how we can do a new manufacturing process with fewer hazardous materials, looking for waste reduction in both ships and forward operating bases, and alternative formulations for what is referred to as aqueous film forming foam, or AFFF. But we're looking only for alternatives that are fluorine free. So they must be fluorine free to be subject of this call. And then finally, insulation, energy, and water. These are an exact replica of the BAA topic. So in the same sense as MR, if you paid attention to 10, you're paying attention now. Okay, so this brings that part of the presentation to a close. There is the website. So there's obviously a lot more on the website that you'd may be interested in. Also directions, deadlines, all the things that I said and you might have forgotten. You can also get these slides there. So now we're going to move into the question and answer part of the thing. So I will try to answer many of the more general questions, and we'll let each of the program managers answer the ones that are specific to them. Okay, Laura, you ready?
Yes. So our first question is, what are typical funding levels for ESTCP demonstration projects?
So I'm actually going to answer two questions in one here. The two combined questions are how much are the projects for and how long do they last? So let's just get them both knocked out at first. So there's really a wide variety in that. I'll give you the median numbers. The median project is 3 years duration, maybe $350,000 a year. But there are some technologies that are quite simple and only $100,000 or so a year for 2 years. And there's some particularly energy demonstrations that are very complex, involve a lot of hardware, and they could be as much as $600,000 or $700,000, $800,000 a year. So there's a wide range, but the standard project would be 3 years duration, maybe $350,000 a year. Not too wrong.
Okay, our next question. Can DoD researchers work with federal non-DoD agencies on the non-DoD proposal?
Yes. So that really just refers to who leads whether it comes in as the DoD or the non-DoD side. If the lead, the principal investigator is a DoD person, then of course it would come in response to the DoD call. If the lead is a private sector individual at a university or a company or something, then it would come in the BAA call. The difference would, it's not a hang up, the only administrative thing in that was we would let our contracting people would let a contract with the private sector people for their part of the project, but we would directly fund the DoD person for their part of the project.
All right, this next question is specific to the environmental restoration program area. What are the emerging contaminants of interest to DoD?
Hi, this is Andrea. You know, definitely of what we're concerned about right now are PFAS and the suite of chemicals under that. To a lesser extent, we're also looking at 1,4-dioxane right now. But what I'd recommend you do is the Department of Defense has a program that really keeps an eye on emerging chemicals of concern. And if you search for the DoD's Chemical and Material Risk Management Program, and you should come to their website, and under there you'll see that they have the Emerging Chemicals Program Basics. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, it'll tell you some of the chemicals that we're keeping an eye on at this point. And that's probably your best source over the years to keep track of what the DoD is doing in terms of emerging contaminants.
Thanks, Andrea. If an investigator is already conducting a demonstration for another government entity on a DoD installation, can that data be used in a potential ESTCP project?
Yeah,
So I think go ahead, Rob.
Go ahead, Herb.
No, I'm just going to introduce you. Go ahead.
Okay, this is Robin Neeson. I guess this is my question, and the answer is pretty much yes. However, I'd also point out that we don't like double dipping. We don't want to pay for the same thing twice. So you really do need to tell us why the data that you're generating at this one DoD facility is applicable elsewhere. So the answer is yes, but. And that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Robin. This question is specific to the Munitions Response Program area. In regards to underwater munitions, are you limited to sensing systems, or can we focus on concussion wave dampening, sedimentation remediation, and environmental remediation of concussion waves?
This is Dave Bradley, responding. It's sort of a two-part question. The first part is yes. The second part is no.
And so I'll make that more explicit. The concussion wave dampening is definitely a subject of the munitions response program area. Sediment remediation, environmental remediation, concussion waves is an environmental restoration program area topic, would be appropriate for them, and they do not have a call for that in this go around. So concussion wave dampening definitely would fall under the MR and how to remediate sites.
This question is specific to the Installation Energy and Water Program area. Are the UESC ESTCP programs to be funded or financed?
So we have a couple projects that are underway, and the way they've been structured is ESTCP would fund a portion in the kind of technology specific portion of the UESC, but the UESC is a unique project itself and may proceed if the ESTCP project were not involved, or it could be a UESC project that is only inclusive of the ESTCP technology, but we do expect that there would be financing as part of the ESTCP project, and ESTCP would be funding only a portion of the project, maybe for some of the engineering up front, the one-time cost, but we expect that in the future that a technology that's being implemented through this program would eventually be able to stand on its own through a UESC in future years.
Should a private company working with an Army lab submit through the BAA and DoD call for proposals, and should we indicate this in the pre-proposal?
So I'm going to answer that question, but while I do it, I'm going to answer about 5 others I see on this list, and they're all about this: how do you do a proposal in which both private sector people, other federal labs, and DoD people are involved? So we get these questions every year, and I guess that means that our guidance is not very clear. So here's a specific question. If a private sector company is working with an Army lab, which should they submit through? So in my mind, this is quite straightforward. There's rarely a topic where there's 2 equal partners. There's almost always a lead. So the lead in either the private sector or the Army lab should submit under the call appropriate to them, with the other partner being a sub. And so that answers a lot of these things. So one of the questions is, can you explain again how the BAA and the DoD calls are different? This is really imposed on us by the contracting system, the government contracting system, and how we have to solicit and how we transfer money. So private sector people, universities, small companies, state governments would apply through the BAA. We would then, upon success, once we select a proposal, our contracting office would enter into a contract with those people, and that's how the money would be transferred. DoD people and other federal governments, we can transfer the money directly without the need of a contract, the so-called MIPR. And so that's really the difference. It's how we have to do the money transfer. So always, if there is a DoD or other federal partner, whether they're primary or not, we transfer the money to them directly. If the federal partner is the lead, then they would be in charge of having a subcontractual relationship with the private sector entity. If the private sector partner is the lead, and then they would submit it to the BAA, then we would initiate a contract with the private sector. So that seemed clear to me. If it didn't seem clear to all of you, type some more questions in there, and we'll try one more time.
What will be the total funding amount available for the call or per topic area?
So there's really no set amount. The budget of ESTCP, is about $60 million a year. As I said earlier, the average length of project is about 3 years. So therefore, we're rolling them over on about a 1/3 each year. So that means something between $15 and $20 million is available for new starts. We definitely have in mind a split among the program areas, but we don't enforce that rigorously, and there's certainly not a number written down next to each of these topics. We really try to put together the best program we can. Obviously, if your proposal is going to require $75 million in the first year to get started, we can't afford it. And if it's going to require $60 million, it's going to have to be the best proposal ever written because you're going to get the whole pot. So you shouldn't really, what we would ask you to do is write down your technology, think about what it costs to do the demonstration, write that down, and then we'll work out the details.
This question is for the Installation Energy and Water Program area. For technologies related to facility-related control systems, should the proposal budget include control system cybersecurity certification cost at the installation?
Yeah, so we have a subject matter expert that provides support to our project to go through the auditing on the cybersecurity requirements. But yes, depending on what the objective is and to what degree an RMF or an authority to operate would be required, then yeah, you should include the cost of the cybersecurity certification in the cost of the project.
This question relates to coastal total water level model comparative assessment. Can the models to be assessed include European models, or should these be restricted to commonly used U.S. models only?
Yeah, this is Kurt Preston. The short answer is yes. European models can be considered, although you don't want to necessarily have something that's very esoteric. It should be something that would be, broadly usable. So think about computation, costs, et cetera. And there was also a question regarding what is the total water level. Of course, that's a term of art that is a combination of tide, surge, and wave runoff. So try to kill two birds with one stone. Thanks.
Thanks, Kurt. Do you need a DoD partner or a demonstration site identified for the pre-proposal phase?
So yeah, this question comes up a lot, and the answer is no. We certainly do not want to discriminate against good ideas that are not plugged into the DoD facilities or systems. So at both stages, the pre-proposal stage and the full proposal stage, we have something that we call the DoD liaison, who will be assigned to you, obviously after the pre-proposal, to help you identify the correct spot. If you know of a pertinent place or something to be good for the demonstration, obviously you can say that in your proposal. If you don't, what we would ask you to do is describe the ideal site. Let us know, what size of loads they need or what contamination levels they would like for the ideal site. And people on the technical committees will help match you up with an installation that meets those requirements.
This question is specific to the Installation Energy and Water Program area. Is topic B7, building level storage, only interested in battery storage, or a thermal storage technology is appropriate for the solicitation?
Thermal energy storage is also appropriate for the solicitation. We ask that, again, that you include in your write-up what the benefits are for the resilience benefits to thermal energy storage. That's all.
Is a project that was researched under CERTUP that is ready for field implementation appropriate to propose under topic B1, innovative technology transfer approaches?
Hi, this is Andrea. I'm assuming that'll go to me. And a technology that was developed under CERTUP that's ready is exactly what we had in mind for proposing under the innovative technology transfer approach. That is not the only type of project that could be proposed there. Often, particularly with knowledge that's developed under CERTUP, you could see perhaps one project that comes out of that on technology transfer that's really transitioning the knowledge from a group of projects, not necessarily a particular project to project sort of transition. So definitely CERTIP is coming from CERTIP to field implementation could be appropriate. It depends if there's still work to be done in the field. It would really need to go through ESTCP to validate the technology first. But occasionally it's appropriate to go from CERTIP to more of a technology transfer approach.
Do state National Guard facilities qualify as DoD sites?
In most cases, yes. There are a few states where it's difficult to get approval to work at the site. Obviously, in many cases, the governor controls them. So we've done a number of demonstrations at state National Guard facilities, so I think you should expect yes, but be ready for complications.
This question is specific to the Weapons Systems and Platform Program area. Would it be considered applicable to demonstrate a newer or higher technology readiness level technology with a legacy munition item to show cost savings or quality improvement?
This is Robin. Yes, that would be applicable within our program area. I would caution, though, that you really need to show us what the environmental benefit is. So just to say I have a performance improvement and I'm at this technology readiness level, the answer might be, well, then get that program area to invest in it. But if there's if there is truly an environmental benefit, then it would be applicable to our program area.
Will participation with SBIR grants affect selection for this program?
No. So as I tried to say earlier, there are many ways to develop technologies that end up in ESTCP. It's not at all uncommon for CERTIP developed technologies to roll in ESTCP, but some people do it privately, some people do it through other funding sources. Certainly anything developed in an SBIR that is the appropriate level of technology is welcome to ESTCP.
This question is for the Installation Energy and Water Program area. For the water resiliency topic area, are there some military installations that might have a higher priority than another?
This is a tough one to answer. I would say we have our technical committee that reviews our proposals, and so we'll have input from all the different services. I would say that there might be a priority based on their input in areas where maybe have recently experienced drought. Most likely, we're looking for, installations where the solutions are cost effective. In that case, either there's a particular interest at the installation where the cost of water is high there, or they have some particular, greater need than others. But generally, the solutions we're looking for should be applicable across the installation. And so, for the demonstration purposes, it might be that there may be a particular urgency somewhere, but that's not going to be a criteria for evaluating those proposals.
Can ESTCP projects be completed within 1 year?
Well, that would be great if they could, and certainly we would like that, but in my experience, that's pretty tough to do. That would mean you'd have to be ready to be in the field right after contract award if you're a private sector person, or right after money transfer if you're a federal person. Most people do 3 to 6 months worth of monitoring, although may have a technology that doesn't require that long. Then there's data analysis, report preparation. If you can squeeze that in a year, you're a very focused person, so congratulations.
Can multiple proposals be submitted by the same organization?
Yes, absolutely. It's not, particularly for the calls that are pretty broad and have a lot of proposals come in, to see 1 or 2 or 3 even from the same organization. Remember, though, that the same technical committee looks at them. So about the time they get to the 10th one you've submitted, they're going to be pretty tired of reading your name.
This question is specific to the Installation Energy and Water Program area. Are technologies to be demonstrated aimed at commercial buildings or residential buildings?
Yeah, the sector that we're looking at is really commercial buildings. Within DoD, we have a wide variety of buildings, obviously, but we don't have a lot of single-family homes anymore. We do have, however, have barracks So it'll be a dormitory type building, but for like single family home resident, we're not interested in technologies that have unique application to those buildings.
Is this funding only for U.S. citizens and green card holders? And is a professor from a U.S. university without a green card eligible for funding?
So the true answer to that thing, no, it is not only for U.S. citizens, green card holders. A professor at a U.S. University is certainly eligible. We have a number of non-U.S. Based in Europe or based in Australia, PIs in these programs, more often in the research program than in the demonstration program, because we try to do the demonstrations at U.S. bases. So that really biases somewhat against PIs based not in the U.S., but it's certainly not out of the question at all.
This question is for installation, energy, and water. How important is cost sharing for ESCOs?
For ESCOs, if they're participating, depending on which topic, if they're the utility partner, it would be the utility who would be managing the financing if it was a UESC integrated project. If it's an ESCO who's participating, let's say on the building level energy storage, cost sharing is not a requirement. However, we do look at that as part of the level of interest and commitment that those solutions will be carried forward by that practitioner.
This is a question for the Resource Conservation and Resiliency Program area. This topic has coastal model assessment tool listed under special interest. Are the requirements the same as the non-DoD call?
Yes.
Okay. Is cost sharing a requirement?
No, cost sharing is not a requirement, but it's obviously, it's evidence that other people than just ESTCP care about the project, and so I think it's a mild positive in the eyes of the committee, but many of our projects do not include any cost sharing, and they've been funded.
This question is for installation, energy, and water. For the buildings energy demonstration program, how do university proposers get in contact with the contract?
I'm not sure I get the question exactly, but I'll answer what I think the question is for university and actually for anybody who may not have an active network within the Department of Defense, that doesn't know a particular contact at an installation. It's not required that you have an installation or a DoD partner identified at the pre-proposal stage. So you could just submit a pre-proposal with your understanding of how your technology would be applied within DoD. If you are selected to move forward, our technical committee will help put your team in touch with an installation or installations from which you can develop a more detailed proposal moving forward.
What are the typical acceptance rates at each stage of the proposal selection process?
So I can answer with assurance half of that question, and I'm going to have to be very hedging on the other half. We strive that when you're invited to submit a full proposal and give a oral presentation, that acceptance rate should be something like 50% from full proposal to funded project. We realize that a number of small businesses apply to these things. Oftentimes, the director of technology and the vice president for something or other has to come to the meeting. This is a big thing for small businesses. So we want the chances at the full proposal stage to be large enough that it makes sense to apply. That, of course, drives the acceptance rate at the earlier stage, the pre-proposal stage. We really are limited to how many full proposals we can request. If only 6 pre-proposals come in, then chances are pretty good. If 65 come in, then the chances are much lower. So it's very variable on at the pre-proposal stage on how many pre-proposals.
Okay, this question is for the Installation, Energy, and Water Program area. In late 2020, DoD contractors will need to be Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification certified to bid on request for proposal. Does this apply to this or future ESTCP solicitations?
So this is a good question. I'm going to try to answer it. I think my approach would be to assume that by the time you get to the contracting phase, if you get that far, that that requirement will be in our clauses for the contract. That said, along the way, we don't expect that the cost of becoming certified in order to perform the project would be borne by the organization fully. We could, include the cost of certification possibly in your proposal. So consider that. I'd say, use this as a reason not to move forward at this point. I think there's ways that we can figure out the solution.
At what point in the process do regulatory partners need to be involved?
We don't really rigidly define this, and it can vary by technology in terms of where you are in the development of it and what type of documents you may be developing in support of it. For example, decision guides, things like this. But having said that, the earlier you involve regulatory partners, the better. It is so beneficial to have some buy-in from regulators. There's often excellent feedback from regulators in terms of what they need to see in the field. So it's really in our best interest to involve regulatory partners as early in the process as possible.
Are investigators allowed to charge overhead in their project budgets?
So absolutely, yes. So most of our contracts, I'm assuming this is a private sector person, most of the contracts that we let are so-called cost plus fixed fee contracts. So that requires that the organization have approved rates. So you will have approved overhead and G&A charges already, and you will then apply those to the budgets that you submit to us. If you don't have approved rates, then we'll have to figure out a way to do a firm fixed price contract, and then the cost that will be given will be the loaded ones only, the loaded cost only.
This question is for the Resource Conservation and Resiliency Program area. For the Coastal Water Level Model Comparative Assessment, what outside of the continental United States region are you looking for?
So outside the continental United States, also known as OCONUS, includes Hawaii and Alaska. And we're also would be focused on those locations outside the United States that are coastal and Department of Defense installations are located. So, Guam, Kwajalein, although we're not solely focused on the Pacific, there's some on the Atlantic. So that's, and actually I think we got some in the Indian Ocean there with Diego Garcia. So it's those coastal installations outside the United States, including Alaska, outside continental United States, including Alaska and Hawaii.
Can we speak with the program officer before submitting a pre-proposal to ensure that our proposal is responsive?
No. So once the call for proposals is active, program officers cannot speak, and we call them program managers, cannot speak to individuals and answer questions about a proposal. And the reason for that is clearly just a fairness of opportunity. That's information that not all proposers would know. So that's it. Where you're getting at, though, is exactly the reason we do the pre-proposal before proposal process. The pre-proposal is your 5-page way to speak to the program manager and the technical committee, and then they will judge at that point whether the proposal is, whether what you're proposing is in line with what we're looking for.
Is past performance of a company an evaluation criteria, or can brand new small businesses apply?
Brand new small business can absolutely apply. What is an evaluation criteria, though, is the project team put together. So the officers and or participants at the brand new small company certainly need to demonstrate that they have some expertise in the field, that they are likely to be able to carry this out. But that will be on the resumes that you submit. You'll demonstrate to us your ability to carry out a project successfully.
Can proposals submitted in previous years but not funded be submitted again this year?
Proposals submitted in previous years can definitely be submitted again if they are still relevant to the topic areas that have been released. If they haven't been selected, though, I would suggest that you take a hard look at the proposal and consider ways that it may need to be strengthened before it's resubmitted. I don't think you would necessarily want to submit the same pre-proposal that wasn't submitted that wasn't selected in previous years necessarily.
This question is for the Resource Conservation Resiliency Program area. For coastal water level assessment, are you looking for sea level rise only, or are other things such as storm surge, tides, and waves?
So I answered that one earlier, but so total water is a term of art that includes tides and surge.
What is the best way to track whether previous projects have been a success and might be ready for tech transfer?
That is a little tricky, I will admit. The best way, though, probably to really understand what's going on with current projects and to see whether they're successful is to, one, attend the symposium. Our current projects present there, and it's a very good opportunity to see what's going on with the various projects. You can also see which projects are publishing. We typically provide a citation list at the bottom of project web pages that provide some of the publications that have come out of the project. And of course, on project web pages, we post final reports when those are ready, or other types of documents that are available along the way. So, but I think for the most up-to-the-minute information, I think the symposium is probably your best source for that information.
Can a DoD organization submit a proposal that responds to a BAA topic?
So I think the answer to that is no, but I think practically that doesn't matter. As I read the DoD topics, they are themselves broader than the BAA topics, so I don't know of any case in which that it wouldn't fit. Maybe if I'm not seeing what you're seeing, you might want to drop me an email and I can answer that more completely.
This question is for the Installation Energy and Water Program area. The Enhanced Energy Resiliency proposal states, proposals that seek to demonstrate mature microgrid technologies will not be considered responsive to the intent of the solicitation. What specific technologies is ESTCP interested in investigating pertaining to microgrids?
So just to clarify, maybe give some context to what we're not interested in. We're not really looking for proposals that, for example, might be touting the energy resilience benefit of a microgrid, but just designing and building a full microgrid that is not particularly unique or innovative based on current technology and deployments of microgrids. That said, generally speaking, what we would be interested in microgrids for this solicitation would be solutions that reduce the time or cost associated with designing and implementing microgrids, which currently is one of the barriers to implementation. Have a unique, implementation approach. Or things of that nature. So specific technology, I'm not going to list those, I don't know those, but really solutions that are, again, reducing the time and cost and improving the kind of capability of microgrids.
For the topic area environmental restoration, subtopic monitoring, is technology for detection and monitoring of heavy metal contaminants of interest?
That would not be ruled out. I would say that at most of our sites, heavy metal contamination is not the cost driver for cleanup, and therefore that makes it less of a priority. If you do submit a proposal looking at something like that, you would want to be very clear on the relevancy for it, the need for it, and really make the case for why it's important to pursue that.
All right. This is the last general question that we'll answer as a part of this Q&A. If a full proposal is requested, do you allow the team to change the title, team members, and budget, or do you need all of those to be the same with the pre-proposal?
Well, they don't all need to be the same with the pre-proposal. In fact, sometimes we'll make that request. We will feel free to ask for maybe a little more of task 1, tell you that we're not interested in task 3. You may need to add a geochemist to the team, so we're free to do that, as are you. Obviously, though, if you change the title, the team members, and the budget all together, that may be a bridge too far for us. So we'll definitely, as part of the full proposal request, we'll let you know what we think it will do to make a stronger proposal. And if you're going to be very radical, you probably should get in touch with your program manager and check that out.
All right. For any other specific questions to a topic area or technology, we ask that you contact the program manager specific to that program area. This concludes our Q&A session. Thank you for attending the webinar today. As a reminder, the presentation and audio will be archived for future reference on the ESTCP solicitation webpage. This concludes today's webcast. Thank you.